Hey everyone, Nick Engvall here. Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about some of the people that make the sneaker history community and this podcast possible. It's more important than ever to think about who you give your money to when you're buying clothing to go with your kicks. Our friends at Guilty Goods started their brand with a goal of giving back, especially to the communities that make sneaker culture possible. With every purchase from Guilty Goods, at least 10% of the proceeds are donated to organizations like Big Brothers and Big Sisters, the Susan G. Komen Foundation, the Movement for Black Lives, and many more. You can save 30% on your order by using the code HISTORY at guiltygoods.us. Again, that's history at guiltygoods.us for 30% off, and you can feel good about your purchase knowing you're supporting a meaningful cause. Sneakers are all about presentation, and if you're like me, displaying your kicks at home or in the office is just as important as when they're on your feet. Sneaker Throne makes sneaker display cases featuring customizable LED lights, drop-side cases to showcase the entire side of the shoe, not just the heel or the toe, the whole shoe. They've also got display cases for trading card collectors and hat collectors. To me, it's the perfect way to display your collection. You can save at least 10% on your Sneaker Throne order by using the code HISTORY at sneakerthrone.com. That's history at sneakerthrone.com. If you're a Patreon supporter or a member of our Discord community, you already know about Kicks with V hot sauce and his small batch, locally sourced hot sauce. V has been one of the biggest supporters of sneaker history and the podcast since the early days. He's currently the defending champion in our community trivia nights competition. Kicks with V hot sauce has been a huge hit with the community. You can save 10% on your order by using the code SneakerHistory10 at kickswithvhots.com. That's SneakerHistory10 at kickswithvhots.com. Now, you're probably here because you like sneakers, and if you join the Discord, you know our community is about so much more than that. Whether it's the marathon-like community calls, trivia night debates, the in-person meetups, or just sharing our favorite experiences, we found that although we have such different backgrounds, we all have some unexpected shared passions. Not only does the entire community look out for each other when it comes to releases, we're like a support group for life in general. You can join the Discord community for free by heading to the show notes of this episode. After you're done listening to this episode, tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how far a simple compliment can take you, and we all know how good it feels to have someone show their appreciation. Now let's get into today's episode.
Jordan trying to shake off Starks. Oh, what a move! With no regard for human life. Final seconds. Bryant for the win.
Iverson against Gill. The crowd on its feet. Allen for the win.
Welcome to the Sneaker History Podcast.
What up, what up? Welcome back to the Sneaker History Podcast. My name is Nick Engvall, and I'm with my guys Mike and Robbie to talk some sneakers. How's it going, fellas?
Man, it's going good. I think I'm just overwhelmed by all the sneakers coming out. Don't know what to buy. How you doing, Robbie?
I'm doing good too. I'm kind of in the same boat. I give myself, I try to adhere strictly to a $300 a month limit on shoes. So it's like, this isn't to mess that up pretty bad. But
yeah, All-Star Weekend is definitely puts a dent in the old planning, spending calendar.
We say that so optimistically, but we all know any of that crap on sneakers, it's not going to it's going to, decisions will be made for us. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to talk, I guess, a little bit about some of the releases that are coming this weekend, but also got some interesting news topics to jump into tonight. But before we get to that, normally we would shout out a review on iTunes, but we don't have any new reviews. So if you got a chance, take a minute, head over to iTunes, leave us a review, leave us some feedback, positive, negative, whatever. Any ways we can make the podcast better for you guys. That's what we're trying to do. So we would definitely appreciate you taking the time to share that feedback with us.
Please.
So I've been kind of wanting to talk about this for a little while. The first topic we want to get into is the coronavirus, and I've been curious about this since it started kind of bumping up in numbers and becoming something that was much bigger than I think anybody anticipated. But according to this article from Footwear News, they say that Nike, Adidas, Burberry, and places like Skechers and Vans are all closing stores in China due to the coronavirus. I'll get into my pessimism after we talk through this. I'll let us get into some.
I have some optimism about it, if I can throw that.
All right. Yeah, let's
Does
hear it.
anybody, when they see the coronavirus, it's typically like in one word. Do you see the word Coronasaurus, like a beer bottle dinosaur?
Oh, okay.
I don't, but I did see that Corona beer had like a crazy dip in sales because people thought it was Corona beer based virus.
That is ridiculous.
Well, there are urban myths of people peeing in Corona at the factories, so you
I
never
mean,
know.
it doesn't taste good to begin with. Corona's rough, but
Agreed.
but it's crazy.
Oh man, I'm I mean, I don't want to say I'm like a crazy Corona fan, but I'm definitely not anti-Corona in any way.
It's
I,
you
I
are. It's like a
You got to pick a side. Dos
Yeah.
Equis or Corona, and I'm definitely on the Dos Equis side.
I mean, yeah, I don't know if I would go with Dos Equis over a Corona. A Corona with lime to me is a pretty refreshing beer. So, I mean, it also might be a little nostalgic. You know, I'm old, so you know, like when Fast and Furious came out in like whatever 2001, they were basically talking about me and my bros, right? So they're like, you can have any beer you want as long as it's a Corona. That's pretty much
Iconic.
the default cheap beer. Working on cars all the time, so you know. I mean, I wasn't stealing shit like that, but
He had a Civic store DVD players.
Do you
What's
still
that?
live life a quarter mile at a time?
Yep. It's funny. One of those memes showed up on my Instagram feed like a few months back, and I actually sent it to my two brothers because it's something like that. Like, you know, we're brothers because we both live life a quarter mile at a time, or something like that. But yeah. But back on topic, this coronavirus thing is pretty serious, and I don't want to dismiss the serious nature of it. I do think that, you know, people closing stores is a testament to how serious it really is, right? There's been a lot of stuff that's come out, and recently, you know, the kind of first doctor that discovered it just did a interview with the New York Times, and he ended up passing away a few days ago. And I'll put a link to that in the description. I know it's not sneaker related, but it was really interesting because he called out that this was happening. I want to say like, you know, quite some time ago, well before it was a big deal, and it was dismissed by the police and the government, and you know, now it's a big deal, obviously, and him passing is pretty significant in that whole storyline to me. But I think that it's really interesting to, if you look at where some of these locations are, we don't have the massive cities that China does, right? So I forget the name of the particular city that it broke out in, but
Wuhan.
Wuhan, yeah. And basically that's like what, 11, 12 million people, I think, which, I mean, that's bigger than most American cities. So the last thing that I read right before this story from Footwear News came out was that one person per household was allowed to go out every 2 days to get food. Otherwise, everybody needed to be inside. And I can't imagine, you know, what that does to a city. I think like this story is really interesting because a lot of the stores that are closing just have zero reason to be open during this time until things get, you know, wrangled up and straightened out, basically.
But
So
it's funny you say they have no reason to be open. Like Nike has closed many stores, but others, and not just Nike, just about every store affected by this is having limited hours still. So, I mean, that just shows that the American retail mindset knows no limits. Because, like, I know Mike's been in this boat too. You can have one person walking through that door like in 5 hours and you're going to stay open because you're going to sell that one thing maybe. So it's just nuts that they still have even partial openings going on.
Yeah, dude, and it's really crazy just to hear. Cause actually, like not only the news, but I have a buddy who's there, like firsthand, kind of experiencing it because he teaches at a private school out there, and one of my good friends I went to college with, and and we communicate pretty often. And he was telling me, yeah, he's like, anything you see in the news is probably like half the story. He's like, it's 10 times worse. And they actually, he lives in Shanghai, and he had to basically the whole school he worked at shut down. I think they pretty much are evacuating everybody at this point. It's nuts to just hear like what's going on from someone who's actually like living it, and it's insane, man. He's like, yeah, like stores are shutting down, and basically they're just displaced until they can figure out what the heck's going on.
That's 1,000,000% true. Because I even have a friend in Korea, and like they're pretty, I'll say spooked. Maybe a good way of saying it, or worried. And it's like 1,000,000 times worse than. And this is going into like Chinese censorship, which we're probably not going to dip into too hard, but just the power of a government-controlled media and how they can control the bottleneck and the flow of information like no other. So, yeah, take it with a grain of salt and think the worst.
Exactly, and my pessimism that I was referring to earlier is I started digging into kind of just how many people, die from other things, and I think the latest toll was over 600 people have died from this, right? And
811 as of this morning when I was watching the news.
Gotcha. And I want to say it was in the 30 to 40,000 infected range. And obviously people from many different countries have passed away from it. Not to discount that. And I, to your guys' point, we might even maybe know half the story in that regard because of it being such a, controlled news environment over there in China. But I was thinking about like how, like the flu or car accidents, gun violence, all these other things that kill people. It's kind of wild, like how the world is reacting to this. Granted, it can spread pretty rapidly if it's not contained to a pretty strict level. But, I think the stat that I came across was, just under like 40,000 people died from gun violence in America in 2018. And it's crazy to me the way we prioritize things, because I don't want to make this about gun violence, because I don't think that people shouldn't have guns. I think that, there's certain people that, like my family is very much like hunting all the time. They, use every bit of the animal that they kill. It's not my cup of tea, but it's something that our family has done for a very long time. And, obviously you could go in many different directions in that conversation, but thinking about that, I just am surprised at how big of a deal this is when it's a very minimal amount of people, considering like, just in Wuhan in general, like saying that there's 11 to 12 million people there and, maybe 30,000 people infected or not even that, right? Because the 30 to 35,000 range was globally. So it's such a small percentage, but it's just something to think about in the way that our news is presented to us and where you're getting your news. And hopefully everybody is listening is taking the time to seek out different people, sharing information, because there's a lot of ways that we can get the truth, and there's a lot of ways that we can get scammed out of a lot of things. So,
oh yeah, and I give you I pull up my nerdy side right now, because everyone knows that I'm a big comic book fan, and the best quote I can think about is from Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. The Joker's talking about, if a truck of soldier blows up, no one freaks out because it's part of the plan, but if something random happens, they freak out because they weren't expecting it. And I think that's probably a prime example of that. It was something we couldn't control, and we didn't listen. And now it's not part of the everyday life. Like, we're used to the flu, we're used to gun violence, we're used to all these things, but this is something new, and it's scary because it's new to us.
The second you said Batman, I just thought, yeah, every other quote that's irrelevant to what you just said.
You went on a whole different path.
But you brought up a good point. Like that's, yeah, it's even scarier. I don't want to say scarier, creepy or trippy, whatever you want to say about it. Is Netflix the past couple months has had so many documentaries about epidemics and stuff, and it's like, oh well, here's one for you. So
yeah, I think that it's fascinating. You know, it's funny because when you said that about Batman, the quote that came to my head was, I think it's you know, I think Alfred says it in one of the Batman movies where he's basically like, you know, sometimes people just do things because it causes the chaos and there is no reason for their purpose, right? And all those things that I think, you know, in a way that shape our view on the world is very fascinating to me. And I like Robbie, have seen, I haven't watched any of these documentaries on Netflix, but they've been popping up a lot. And, you know, in the sneaker world, we see very similar things going on, like with algorithms, right? So if the hot topic today is the coronavirus and Netflix can crank up the, you know, fear factor on a bunch of their trending shows, they're going to get more views. And the same things happen in the sneaker world. And, you know, it's like, that's why you see, you know, on YouTube or on, you know, Instagram or Twitter or wherever, a lot of the mainstream kind of sneaker content that goes out there is all the same. You know, there's not too many people talking about the kind of not off topic, but just like that second and third tier news, because they know that if they talk about an Off-White release or a Travis Scott release, they're going to get views on that compared to, you know, like, you know, a new Asics runner collab or some New Balance or something like that. So I think that it's really interesting to watch this whole kind of epidemic happen and the way that it's being covered by the media. And it's kind of not sneaker related, but if you ever are looking for a good book, The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell is a really good book to read on kind of understanding how things go from like, you know, a trending topic to like, you know, it's like heating up to on fire in the NBA Jam world, right? But like that book is one of those books that puts a lot of perspective into like what that can actually mean for, you know, both like things like viruses or violence in, you know, in New York City in the 80s. You know, he talks some about hush puppies and how they became, you know, like so popular. I would imagine that if he rewrote it again, you could look at shoes like Doc Martens this last year or the Fila's last year. You know, like there's certain things that just happen, and that, like, you know, to use his term, the tipping point effect of them becoming like, you know, going from like just a kind of small cultural environment like sneakers to like a mainstream, everyone's paying attention to Off-White releases now, or Jordan 1 releases or Jordan 11 releases, is a really fascinating topic. And he does a really good job of kind of telling those stories and visiting those stories throughout the years that have kind of created these repeatable patterns when it comes to, you know, trends and whatnot. So, but yeah, anyway, it's totally off topic, but I think it's a good one. It's really relevant. I was kind of curious to see if I could find any other announcements in terms of the stores shutting down, because like on this article on Footwear News says that roughly half of Nike stores in China are temporarily being closed. I think Adidas said a considerable number. Stores like Michael Kors, Versace, Jimmy Choo, over half of their stores are closed. And obviously from the Footwear News perspective, like all of these are, you know, about revenue and will they hit revenue and that kind of thing. And I think my last kind of soapbox commentary on this whole subject is I wish that we as society, or as America specifically, had the wherewithal to say, like, hey, we need to just put a pause on this because there's more important things going than, the price of stock for this next month or 3 months or whatever it's going to take. Because I really think, like, you see a lot of challenges with businesses that are run through the stock market and driven by shareholders, and that, whether that's a dividend or the share price that they're trying to drive up, I don't think that it's always the right choices for the business and the right choices for the people involved in the business or the consumers are made when you're driven by a stock price. So that's it. I guess maybe we hop into a less serious topic. Mike, you want to lead us into this one since you pulled this one?
Yeah, so there's another Fear of God 1 coming out. Looks like over All-Star Weekend, if I'm not mistaken. From what Robbie said, it looks like it may just be exclusively released in Chicago as of now, but we're not 100% sure. But that's not the crazy part. All of the advertisement he's been putting out, all of the social media posts, he said that he based the colorway off Allen Iverson's sneaker with the toe box being a different color. Now, he said it's based off the question, that the contrast between the toe box and the shoe, but then he has pictures of the Answer 4, but that's a whole different story. But it's crazy to me that all his advertisement has Iverson in it wearing Reeboks. He's recreating old pictures, and he's selling the Nike, but he's having pictures of AI in the Reebok, which I'm not sure how he got away with it, because Nike's not known to really play well with others, especially when they're trying to sell a shoe. I don't know. I mean, I like Jerry Lorenzo's product. I think he does a great job, and I've actually followed a lot of his his different interviews and stuff. I think he seems like a pretty solid dude in what he does, but I just want to know what you guys think on how he got away with this one.
So I think all of the Reebok and Adidas side-by-side stuff is just on his page. There's not going to be anything other than Nike selling Nike or concerned with Nike.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, don't you think his contract is like, hey, I don't want to see you anywhere near, another shoe?
No, I mean, I bet you can't wear it, but just to tell the story and show, showing instead of telling. It's kind of like one of the best storytelling, rules of thumb to follow. So I get it. I don't see a problem with it at all, honestly. And it helps having Gary Land on there, because he's best known for being Iverson's photographer. He did the Iverson book, I believe, Nick, right? He did the Iverson. He did a whole book on him. So it's bringing him in wraps everything together as to why. So without him, or without having the photos of Iverson, it wouldn't make any sense other than, oh, this just looks cool. It might look familiar to other people, but I don't think he's being forced so much to where he can't even show a Reebok thing. So I know when Iverson retired, Nike didn't do anything for him, but Nike athletes and everybody posted Reebok stuff because he was always in Reebok. So kind of you have to. It's unavoidable. So
I think it's really interesting though, because Nike would never obviously allow this to happen normally. And I think that, it just goes to show how important Allen Iverson really was. And, obviously if you have followed me or listened to this for a while, he's by far my favorite athlete, one of my favorite just, human beings in general. I'm a huge collector of everything he's done and been a part of. But I think that his influence was so substantial throughout the 90s and 2000s, because if you look at the other side of the coin at that time, you had Michael Jordan, who is so polished and, still to this day doesn't speak up. And that's nothing against MJ. I mean, why mess with, the good thing you've got going? I totally understand that perspective, but I also really admire, Allen Iverson taking the opposite approach and kind of always being outspoken and always, fighting battles for, the kind of common folk worker, blue collar worker type that I think he really represented, because he was an anomaly. He wasn't supposed to be, this successful basketball player. He was barely 6 foot, and, it just was, like he battled so many different things, and that came out in who he was on and off the court. I think as far as, Jerry Lorenzo paying tribute to him and working with Gary Land, he's doing it in a very tasteful way. And it's one of those things where, we can only go so long with the stories from Nike that don't include the rest of the world of footwear, the rest of the world of sports. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I think that, Nike has the best storytelling, like hands down. They have always been the best at marketing their product, at inspiring people, at connecting to aspiring artists and creatives and athletes and entertainers. But it's not to say that, when, let's say, if we use Reebok as an example, when Reebok came at them with the pump ads, it was a big deal, like Reebok was outselling Nike at that time, or very close to it. And they went back and forth for a number of years. And I think that's an important part of the story, whether they would agree that this needed to be done in this way. Yeah, I could see them being totally against it. But I also think we're getting to the point where the further these, kind of high level creatives go into the business of Nike, the less people can push back, because these guys drive so much attention and so much, energy around the products that they're creating that, why try to stop it, right? Like, why not just embrace that, hey, Jerry knows his customers better than Nike knows his customers. And this is something that I always ran into headaches with when I would work for like Finish Line, or even doing stuff for, Foot Locker and East Bay over the years, where Nike's very controlling about the messaging that they put out there, and they want every retailer and partner that they work with to align with their message. But Nike doesn't sell to the kid in the store the way that a Finish Line has to sell to the kid in the store, or Foot Locker or Champs or, Foot Action. Like, those stores that are in the mall are very much like right now, very like, they have to be kind of closing those sales at every given moment. And they have to be way more about real life. If you look at like a Nike ad or Nike creative of any kind, that can be very aspirational. You could say like, you're going to grow up to be LeBron one day. You're going to grow up to be Kobe one day. You're going to grow up to be MJ one day. And that's great, because that puts in my mind as a kid that, hey, look, I'm growing up to be like my heroes. But in the mall, you're not thinking about like being that hero. You've got to be thinking about, hey, it's a tiny subset of what you're thinking about, but really you're thinking about, how do I look fresh going to school tomorrow? Or how do I look fresh going to work tomorrow? Or whatever that is. How do I stand out from the other mall employees this week? And that's what the difference between like a Nike, kind of storyline and what a retail storyline is. And I think that as these areas become more gray, people like Jerry Lorenzo, Virgil, some of these like very like, very like creative, but like push the envelope type people are going to eventually break down some of those walls that exist at Nike in order to open up those conversations, or even like these things. Because at the end of the day, if Jerry Lorenzo comes out and tries to tell a story that's not authentic to him and not about Iverson and the way that those pants are unbuttoned to show Iverson's tattoo on his leg and Gary Land captured the photo, if he's trying to tell that same story without the actual photos and the actual visuals that inspired him, it's going to come across that way. And then he loses his legitimacy in all of this stuff that he's put in so many years of work to get to. So, I don't know. It's really fascinating, though. I think one thing that you said about Robbie that was interesting too. All the players paying tribute to Iverson when he retired was really fascinating. It was also really fascinating to see Nike kind of dip their toes into that water and create the Zoom Flight 96 with Allen Iverson's Philly colors and his number on the back, because I think they know that was the one athlete that might have gotten away or might have actually gave them legitimate competition, because since Iverson, there's very few athletes that have been to the level of Nike athletes, right? And if it was not a sustained thing the way Iverson's was, at least in my opinion. Might just be fanboying out right now, but that's my thoughts.
No, I mean, okay, so T-Mac for a minute, Derrick Rose for a minute. Outside of that, I mean, Grant Hill for a minute. There's not really a lot of competition there to speak of.
Yeah, and I would say, like, with Iverson, you also had like the on-court, off-court play, right? Where a lot of the other players never really got that, right? And not to say that Iverson's off-court stuff was that, genius or anything. Like, they basically just recreated white-on-white Air Force Ones. But off-the-clock stuff for him was still selling, and people were still buying it. You would still see people wearing it. And I think, like, I'm a big Tracy McGrady fan. I'm a big D Rose fan. And they just didn't quite have to that level, kind of like you said with Grant Hill. It was very short-lived for Grant Hill, unfortunately, because of his injuries. I think even with T-Mac, like, people were into the shoes, but and a lot of people really love his logo. Same with D Rose, right? Like, it didn't have that holding power, staying power that I think Iverson had, where Nike would have to think, okay, like, you think of like how successful, the kind of first 4 or 5, signature models for Iverson were. With anybody else, you were kind of beyond that, at like 2 or 3. And, yeah, you could argue that they went on discount, but everything went on discount back then, like every Nike basketball shoe or Jordan shoe eventually went on discount, it seems like. So I think that, our memories are a little twisted because we glorify certain things as sneakerheads. Mm-hmm. And, I do it too. I think we all do it. But I think the reality is, like, the competition between those two brands and all the brands throughout the years is always what pushes everybody to go further and do better. And, Jerry Lorenzo taking kind of the, I guess the reins in this conversation for this shoe this weekend is potentially going to open up new opportunities to do that, because I think, like, one of his comments on his Instagram post was, Allen Iverson's, Georgetown jersey potentially being equally as iconic as Jordan 11s. And at that time, I would have chose the jersey if I could have got it. Like, I didn't have the money for either at that time, but, like, I think there would be a valid argument to, like, what you were going to choose if you were buying the Jordan 11s or Iverson's jerseys, or even the Georgetown shorts. Man, those were fire too.
Everything was.
Yeah.
But he made it cool. I mean, like, in a vacuum, yeah, gray and navy is cool. But what Iverson did to it just make everything just so cool.
Well, and he made everything hip hop, right? It was like everything else was, it's nothing against, like, Michael Jordan, but, like, you knew that Michael Jordan wasn't listening to hip hop. Like, you didn't even have to know him to know that. Like, he came across as a very polished, fairly well off dude. And Iverson was like the guy that we all wanted to be, or we all hung out with and we all knew, and that he was closer to the reality for us, I think. And that was, at least for me. But I think one of the things that's really interesting about this storyline, and I hope to see more of this in the future, is that Jerry Lorenzo taking Gary Land and bringing him back in to shoot these photos for him and connecting those two eras through the photographer is something that's, 100% on point. We try to shout out any photographers we know the photos came from on Instagram. And sometimes it's just hard to find who shot the photos because those guys don't get enough credit. And I think looking at this recent LeBron photo, right? The reverse dunk from, was that Andrew Bernstein you said, right?
Yeah.
Those are the types of things that they're so powerful, how we remember sneakers and basketball specifically is, there are memes and there are, videos now, but those photos are really what's going to be the thing that carries these stories. And if those guys that have been taking those photos for years can be brought in to recreate some of the, I think of Walter Ios, who shot a lot of the MJ stuff in the, late 80s, early 90s. Those are kind of the iconic photos, the Gatorade commercial photos and those kind of things where if you could bring him in to tell new stories, that's to me, the next evolution of marketing in footwear for at least these stories that are connected to basketball.
Yeah. Those pictures are, I was telling you guys before we started that I need to do more research on it because I always love looking at the pictures because it's something different about you. I mean, of course you want to watch them in live play and it's really cool to see it. But when these photographers get out there and take these pictures, they had a whole new depth to them because they're able to, put the color a little bit, make it a little darker, make it more cinematic. And these are just fantastic photos. I would love to just get my hands on a bunch of them.
Nick, I think you brought up a good point of it being hard to shout out photographers, even if you want to, because some of the photos have just been passed around so much that it's like a game of telephone who has the original. But besides that, so many good people do work for let's use the obvious Finish Line and have, do you want to shout out Finish Line? Not so much. Unless you guys want to sponsor us, then we're more than welcome to. Outside of that, I mean, we're fortunate to know that Chris Elliott took a lot of those photos. So we can tag him because we just happen to know him, and he's a friend, so it's it's easy. But so many stock photos from bigger brands and even sports teams. You're the photographer for the Heat. You're not the photographer. You
make a great point. We pass these photos around so much now. I mean, by the time a photo gets in front of me, it's probably 1,000 people removed from wherever it originated because nobody actually credits the photographer. You could look at, and this is not picking on anybody, but you could look at, BR Kicks or Soul Collector or Slam Kicks, and almost none of them credit the photographer because they're probably paying for those people to take pictures for them. So, or maybe they use the NBA's photos, NBA Kicks. And of course, the NBA is paying somebody for those photos. They're not going to say taken by this person. And to your point about Finish Line, right? Chris took a lot of those pictures while working for Finish Line. And, there's an argument to both sides. I think there's more value in having individuals represent your company publicly. But it's also it's kind of outside the box thinking if you are thinking that way as a big business, right? Because big businesses, they look at the numbers at the end of the day and say, we need this many photographers, we need this many pictures, we need this much engagement on social, we need blah, 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 blah. And here's our revenue at the end of the year. They're not thinking, hey, we've got this like kind of up and coming photographer. We need to elevate him and have him associated with our brand. Now, I would argue that, there's a lot of people that are really talented with the camera that probably did a lot of work for a lot of these brands, that as they get more and more successful in their careers, I think these brands and these, retailers are going to wish that they actually, maintain better relationships with those people, because you're literally going to go back to these photos and revisit these moments, because that's the nature of the internet, right? Like, we rehash and retell stories on a regular basis. And I think, it's inevitable that these types of people get more credit. It's just going to be, what brands and what companies are willing to like kind of share that credit, right? Because at the end of the day, photography is one of those, anything creative, but photography specifically is one of those things where in order to do what you love, you typically need to find somebody that has money to pay for you to do that. And usually it's a bigger business than an individual photographer. And there's a give and take in how they approach that. I will say that I would really love to know, as we're talking about photographers, like, one, what is, for you guys, what is your kind of, what would you say is like your most iconic photo? What's the photo that comes to mind? And two, are there people out there that we should be looking at as far as photographers that we can reshare on the Sneaker History platform, or maybe even get on the podcast to talk about what they're doing? Because I love to kind of elevate those people. I'm sure we'll reach out to Chris at some point soon, because like, we obviously all know him fairly well. My friend Griffin, Griffin 33, I think, on Instagram, Vince Sirico, Oscar from Modern Notoriety. There's a lot of guys that are taking really good photos. Grant, SC Knows. I would love to find more of these people and figure out a way to help them grow their audience. And, maybe we can do something that, whether that's an in-person event or just something through our channels, to showcase what these people do, so that people do remember that these are the guys behind, or, guys, girls, whomever, people behind these photos, so these memories can be tied to those individuals. I think, as I said, that another one is Ravy B on Twitter or Instagram. Takes a lot of tour photos in the hip hop world and has done some, amazing stuff over the years. Those are the people that I think I'd love to bring somehow into, or at least just elevate. I'm kind of rambling, but going back to the question, what's like if you think of like the iconic either sneaker or basketball, football, sports, whatever, what's that iconic photo that comes to mind for you guys?
Yeah, I got a couple of them. I mean, of course, first one that pops into mind, basketball, is going to be what you guys are probably thinking the same one. Is going to be the D Wade to LeBron alley oop. That's just the perfect timing and just a perfect picture. Then you also have the picture of AI stepping over Ty Lue, and then I think probably the last one is the Vince Carter dunking over, I can't remember his name, but the French basketball player in the USA versus France game in the Olympics. Those are probably my three most iconic basketball photos. Sneaker photos, I mean, first time you saw Kanye wearing Ultra Boost that in his concert when he's like in mid jump in that foggy yellow like background. That is just a pretty, like, whoever took that picture, that's such a solid picture. And I think that's one of the ones that will live on in like concert picture and sneaker picture like history.
Yeah, I mean, my pick for photographer wise is going to be, Cassie Athena. Not really an underdog in the game. She's everywhere. but just gets all of the. I mean, it would be B-roll, but it's A+ roll. Just like the behind the scenes stuff and the intimate moments, along with like the dunks and the crossovers and like the portrait style stuff and like the in the tunnel stuff. But everything else is just so it's original. It's like Russell Westbrook just hanging out. It's Paul George hanging out. It's Bronny. It's all these various people in basketball just in a way that makes them feel really personable. And I love that about her work. But when it comes to dunks, I mean, it's funny because I automatically start thinking dunks when like best photos. The Kobe on Dwight Howard, teabagging Dwight in the 2K4s, all black. That's probably my favorite of favorites. Man, just like magic on the fast break. All those are just the coolest photos. But my favorite basketball, like not basketball photo, and it definitely falls underneath the category of passed around a lot, so I don't know who took it at all, and I bet you most people don't. It's the J.R. Smith and Allen Iverson playing pool in their Denver Nuggets uniforms before a game. I love that photo because you know there was alcohol in there and they just didn't get it in the photo. Like you know they were having fun before the game. And it's like, yeah, I just love that kind of, yeah, there's intimate moments, right? Just candid moments. But that's like the definition of like the Allen Iverson, I don't give a fuck, I'm just gonna go hoop mentality. I'm just gonna hang out and play pool. And it looks like a strip club. I don't think they are in a strip club, but just like there's glass mirrors everywhere and it's like it's so tacky looking, but it's just so Iverson and JR.
Yeah.
Like, I love JR Smith too. I'm a big JR Smith fan. So it's just two of my favorites and doing the bad stuff. That's not really all that bad. I mean, when you think about it, half the stuff Iverson got grilled for is not all that bad, if not bad at all. So, yeah, those are mine.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like I mentioned, Walter Ios, the Jordan free throw line dunk, that's like the pinnacle of photography for me. It's like one of my favorite shoes, one of the most important moments. Like, just captured something that I, would not have. It was amazing watching it. Like I remember watching that as a kid, but to like from like Flight Club, Michael Jordan's Flight Club stuff, the Wheaties boxes to I mean retro cards in the late 90s and early 2000s. Like there was just so many times where that picture was just like so important. And it really just made me think like, man, this guy is really flying, like I don't think like any other photo can compare to that in a sense, because it really like helped me. It just inspired me so much. There's another, I think like the early Allen Iverson, like Sixers photos, there's a picture of him. I mean, I obviously love like the crossover on MJ, but like there's a photo, I think, it's got to be like 96 or 97 because he's wearing red toe questions, but it was shot by Al Tealman. It was in a Sports Illustrated article when I was like just out of high school, I think. And it's Allen Iverson dunking on Judd Bushler. And that photo to me is like, it was just so crazy because it just shows like how tiny Iverson is, how high he's getting up. And Judd Bushler's like standing kind of falling backwards with his he's trying to draw the charge. But Iverson is literally like, his chest is at Judd's like fingertips, right? And I don't know how tall Judd Bushler is, but he's got to be 6'8", 6'10", something like that. And I just remember seeing it in Sports Illustrated and remember thinking, like, this is like the closest I can relate to kind of like the David and Goliath story of, like, this is like the underdog of all underdogs coming to the league and dunking on these, massive big men, or crossing over, Michael Jordan, the greatest player of all time, all these conversations that are in your head where you're just like, for me, I was, Iverson obviously was important, but like seeing a photo like that, it was like something about that I could relate to, where it's like, I might not come from the best background or be able to compete on the highest and highest of levels in any particular sport, but once in a while I might get you. And that was kind of like what I saw in all those photos. But that one in particular of him dunking on Judd Bushler, which I'll try to find it. And I think it's Al Thielman. He shot a lot of the Iverson stuff early years. But obviously Gary Land, I have that book. If you want a great coffee table book, the Gary Land Allen Iverson photo book is phenomenal.
That's a dope picture. I just looked it up. Man, that was an awesome picture.
You're right. It's just, I mean, he looks so tiny, but he's so freaking high, Yeah, it's just wild. But I don't know. I think, I'd love to hear from everybody what they've got, what their favorite photos are, and let us know. Hit us up on Instagram or Twitter, Facebook, wherever you want to connect with us. If you have any photographers that we should be watching, definitely tag them. We'll throw a post up tomorrow or whenever this goes live, and let us know who the photographers are that we should be looking at, both like the sneaker photography and, lifestyle stuff, right? Because I think there's a lot of people that are taking sneaker photos that are really, really creative that kind of are getting overlooked because they focus on something that they love. And I think that's a good place for us to be able to help elevate some of those people. So I realized that we forgot to do Rockin Coppin. So what are you guys rocking today or this weekend? What was on your feet?
I was rocking my 2011 black cement 3s. Coppin. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing right now. I think I'm probably gonna try to put a focus probably close on the All-Star game, LeBron 7s if possible, and probably secondary is going to be one of the D-Rose. D-Rose 1 retros, but other than that, man, I need some help. I need some insight to what's going on with these releases in Chicago. What about you, Robbie?
Man, I am all over those LeBron 7s like white on rice. I tried to get them. Foot Locker had them this weekend releasing, so I tried to get them Saturday, but those sold out really fast, and I was pretty sad. But yeah, I'm just really looking to get those. And rocking wise, I've worn those blue Air Max 90s almost every day since I've had them. So I'm obsessed with wearing those, and that's what I'm wearing. But LeBron 7s for sure.
I'm not into the LeBron 7s, but I'm actually really into those Fear of Gods. I think the Iverson story has got me hooked. But that would be my cop if I had to choose one. Obviously, there's a lot of good stuff coming out. For me, like I wore some old Reeboks today, the 3D Dash. I'll throw a picture up on my Twitter if you want to check it out. It's just an old like kind of DMX Run 10 era, bright ass yellow shoe. But yeah, that's about it. So thank you all for taking the time to rock with us. Listen, if you do have a moment, we would greatly appreciate if you could leave us a review on iTunes. If you're looking for more content from us, first be sure to check out our last podcast. Robbie and Ro kind of took on a new approach, a little more basketball focused episode, which I thought turned out really great. So make sure you listen to that. Give us some feedback if you want us to do more of that. We would love to be able to figure out a way to incorporate maybe one of those a week or something like that. And otherwise, guys, let them know how they can find everybody.
Yeah, for sure. You guys can find me, Mike Guillory, here on Sneaker History. Find me on Instagram and Twitter at MadWatcher789. And, of course, the new YouTube channel, again, at Mike Guillory. I just dropped a new video today, so let me know what you guys think. Robbie, where can we find you, sir?
You can find me at RAHBEE702. And, yeah, check out the sports episode, and thank you all for listening and hanging out.
Right on. We appreciate all of you, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.
See ya.
Have a good night. Bye. Or good day. Good morning.
Whenever you're listening.
Hey everyone, this is Nick again. Before you take off, I wanted to ask a couple favors of you. If you're interested in more content from the Sneaker History crew, become a member of our Patreon page where we post daily content, drop exclusive episodes, and host monthly giveaways. We'll even help you hunt for your grails. Check us out at patreon.com/sneakerhistory. Also, make sure you sign up for our email newsletter at sneakerhistory.com/email. We send out weekly updates on the footwear business and what we're working on here at Sneaker History. Last but not least, take a second to tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how much it means to someone, and it might even plant the seeds for something even bigger. As always, we appreciate you, and we'll catch you next time. Peace. Hey everyone, this is Nick again. Before you take off, do us a solid and head over to Apple Podcasts to leave us a review. Give us a rating on Spotify and Amazon Music, and make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel because we have even more video content coming soon. Speaking of new content, we have an amazing community of sneaker enthusiasts that hang out in our Sneaker History Discord on a daily basis. While sneakers is a connection point that brought us all together, we've all discovered countless shared passions that we have in common with each other. We recently launched a couple of new podcasts directly from our community. One of them is a Formula One podcast. If you're an F1 fan like me, the Exhaust Notes podcast is your weekly fix of Formula One fun. It's hosted by myself, Rohit Malhotra, and Todd Yates. New episodes drop every Tuesday. I've been wearing fitted hats for years and collecting my favorite teams since I was a little leaguer. It has been awesome to see so many new fans getting into fitteds in recent years. Crown and Stitch is our new talk show about fitted hats with Dexter, Keith, and myself, where we talk about fitted hats, snapbacks, throw in some obscure hats because we all kind of like some funky stuff once in a while, don't we? Copping, collecting, and so much more. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Hit the links in the show notes for this episode to give our new shows a listen, and be on the lookout for more new podcasts dropping soon. Last but not least, tell someone you like their kicks today. You never know how far a simple compliment can take you, and we all know how good it feels to have someone show their appreciation. Thank you all for the support, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.